Today is February 25th, 2013, and we are interviewing John Gramm, John Gramm at the Gridley Public Library. John was born 8/26/1931, and my name is Cheryl Walker, and I'll be the interviewer. John, could you state for the recording what branch of service you served in?
The Army.
And what was your rank?
Corporal.
Okay. Did you serve in a war?
Yes.
Which war was that?
The Korean War.
Okay. And where were you stationed at? When you first joined the service, were you drafted or were you?
Yes, I was drafted into the Camp Picket, Virginia, with my basic training area.
Do you remember that day that you got your draft noticed?
Well, yes, I do.
What were you doing?
I guess I don't remember it that close, but I know it was a, kind of an exciting day.
Okay. So did you take a train or did somebody drive you or?
Yes, from Chicago. We took a train from Chicago to Virginia as a train. And a good friend of mine happened to be on the same train. And worked out good.
So it was a good train ride.
Yeah.
Can you, after you went to Virginia, where did you go from there?
Well, I had a furlough, of course, before I went overseas, and then I went to Seattle, Washington, out to Fort Lewis at Washington, and then from there went straight over to Japan for processing, and then went to Korea.
What did you do in the service?
I was a litter jeep driver.
A litter jeep?
It's they call them litters in the Army, a stretcher. They call them litter jeep, and we had 2 litters on the back of the jeep, and it was my job to go and pick up wounded men and take them back to the medical aid station.
Oh, so that was probably a hard job to do, wasn't it?
Well, I like to drive, and I could at least drive a jeep, and I've done my part.
Did you, when they drafted you, did you sign up to do that, or did they just say, this is what you're going to do?
No, I just, I was a non-combatant, and all non-combatants at that time were going to Camp Picket for the basic training, and it was from there on. I was just assigned to a medical company when I got overseas, and then that's what I got to do, was drive a jeep. And I was a farmer before I went to the service, and I think they thought probably farmers could drive jeeps.
So how many years were you in the service?
21 months.
Okay. Where in Korea were you?
It was called the Shorewon Valley. It was north of Seoul, about I would say 40 miles, about 30 to 40 miles north of Seoul, northeast.
Did you get immersed in the culture of where you were stationed at all?
Well, yes, we had some clothing sent over. This was after the truce was signed. had some clothing that was sent for orphanage, and I got to drive my Jeep. Had a little trailer, and the sergeant went along, and well, there were several of us, and we took those clothes to the orphanage and distributed them. It was interesting, and otherwise I got to go to Seoul, visit there, and I stopped at a lot of the or some of these the stores that they have, grocery stores along the road, and they had a lot of items there to buy.
Did you buy a lot of things while you were stationed there?
Not really. I did. I bought a camera, and I bought. Well, some of the things that I bought were just like catalog things that I bought to send home. I got them like from a catalog that was through Japan, and then it went on to the United States.
You said you went to Japan first. Where in Japan did you go?
Well, it was right at I think it was near Yokohama, near what's the capital?
Tokyo?
Tokyo, right close to Tokyo. It was I think it was the Yokohama harbor that we were at, and we was only there for just a couple of days.
What was the unit that you were part of?
Well, it was the 365th Regiment of the 3rd Division, and I was actually served in the 1st Battalion as the liturgy driver, and we have a aid station that we would call the battalion aid station. And when we were on the front lines near the military zone there, we had a forward aid station, which was exactly on the reverse slope before you get into the no man's land and over to the north side of Korea. At that time, Korea was at the Korean War was at a stalemate, and we just every 2-3 nights they would have patrols. They would go out and meet the enemy, and sometimes they would make contact, sometimes they wouldn't, but sometimes there were injuries and fatalities in a no-win situation.
Did you take the wounded back to your
aid station?
Aid station
Yes.
there, and it was right there where you were stationed at.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that you received a Bronze Star.
Mm-hmm.
What was that for?
Well, at the end of it was in July, just before the truce was signed. The 3rd Division was up on the front line, and the 2nd Division was called blocking, and we were going to exchange places, and this 3rd Division was going to be in blocking because we had been up there 3 months, and then the 2nd Division would take our place. And during that process, the Chinese or the North Koreans that was entered our area, and actually we heard that they took the very forward aid station that we had been in. So then we were sent right back up to the front line to try to stop the gap, they called it, and I have an article of that in my memorabilia, and there we had to dig foxholes, and I was in a foxhole, and they called for a Jeep driver, and I went. It was just like I usually did, although it was slightly more danger because there were artillery rounds coming in. So I got in my Jeep, and another man went with me. I always had we call it the assistant driver. And so we went out and picked up our wounded man and brought back, but nothing more than I ever did before. And we thought it was, then they signed the truce in a few days, and I think they probably wanted to give some medals. that's why.
Did you receive any other medals?
Well, not besides those that you would get ordinarily. There was the UN medal, the good
conduct?
Good conduct medal, yeah. And then I did have, they call it the combat medical badge, which there's a combat infantry badge, and you got a combat medical badge. And
did you sustain any injuries?
No. I was in a tent at one time, and I guess this was about the same time as where we had that breakthrough, and we had a tent, and there was artillery rounds coming in, and we took a litter off of my Jeep, and I was in this tent laying on the ground on the litter, and there's other men there, and was on beds, and a artillery round came in not far from us and just riddled our tent with shrapnel. Nobody was hurt, and except one of my buddies was on a litter beside me, and he got a piece of shrapnel on his arm. It wasn't real serious, and he was just real happy that he could go back to the hospital because he was going to have some stitches and things. But otherwise, there was nobody hurt.
Did you have to? You had a Jeep with your litters on. Did you have to take care of the Jeep yourself? Was that assigned to you and only you, and you had to take care of it? You had to clean it.
That's right. I wasn't supposed to leave the Jeep, and it was my responsibility to keep it clean and everything. Although we had men that did mechanical work, and if there's any mechanical work to be done. But yes, I had one experience where we went after a injured person, we thought, and we got to the aid station, or to the forward aid station, and here it was a KIA. He was killed in action, and so we put him on the Jeep, and we drove back we're going to drive back to our aid station, and they had these great big spotlights that shone out, and there was hills in Korea, and as I was driving around a curve, the spotlight just came out behind the hill, and I just kind of got excited or couldn't see as good, and I went right off the ditch. And so we there's another man with me, and they called him a shotgun rider, and he was with me, and we had to place things back in order a little bit on the litter, and then we could back out, and the only thing was a little bit hurt on the front of the Jeep, and of course then the mechanics had to take care of that and fix it. But it wasn't really a dangerous thing, but it was kind of scary at the time.
When you came back from the service, did you ever own a Jeep?
No, My brother had a Jeep, and I drove it quite a few times.
How did you get along with your officers and fellow soldiers?
Well, pretty good, I would say. And as I mentioned, I was a non-combatant. Fellows at basic training, they said, "Well, you get over to Korea," they said, you'll be one to use a rifle." And I said, "Well, no, I won't." And we got when the guys over there, they were kind of, there were other non-combatants in the company, and so it wasn't a real unusual thing. But they would always kind of heckle you a little bit and wonder, well, why if everybody was like you and would carry a weapon? I said, well, there probably wouldn't be any more wars. And I stayed true to my Lord and never carried a weapon. And we did have to drive past a Army tank that would shoot tracer bullets off into the other side of they called it no man's land, and then the Chinese and North Korean was on the other side, and it was quite a kind of a thrill. It was underneath that thing, that'd be shooting tracer bullets, and well, there were bullets too, but I mean, they're tracer bullets. You could see right where they was destined to go. And I also had the opportunity to go over the top of the hill, and we went into the trenches that the infantrymen had to stay in, and we could walk. And I imagine that was for clear across Korea. You could have taken the trenches and walked across Korea. And then you look over on the other side, and at daytime there would be nothing stirring, and the United States. There was a lot of the United States had air superiority, and so at that time we didn't have to worry much about that at all.
Did you keep a personal diary?
No, not really.
Did you were you able to communicate with home through letters?
Through letters, yes.
Do you still have those letters?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
My mother, she wrote a lot of letters, and I had two sister-in-laws and my sister, two sisters, and they all wrote me letters, and from different friends and from our church, then we'd get letters, and I really didn't want any more experiences that I had.
Yeah.
When I first got over there, I was in a replacement, they call them repl depot, where we would replacements were processed. And about the first night, the sergeant come up and says, "You're on guard duty." And I says, "Well," he said, I don't really carry a weapon," I said. "Well," he said, he was kind of shocked. And I just told him, "Well, I'm a non-combatant, and that's the way I've been treated." And I said, I just, well, he said he wasn't going to change me, his plans. But so he said, "Well, at least take a stick with you in case you run into a dog, or something." So I did that, and it was kind of, to think of it, you're halfway around the world, and there you're out, well, walking guard duty without a weapon. Yeah. But it was really we were about 20 miles from the front line then, and there really wasn't any danger. But it's still a funny feeling to think you're halfway around the world from home, and there you are walking guard duty without a weapon. But I have to admit that I trusted in the Lord, and I just never, I really never feared. I mean, I knew I had to be there. There was nothing else I could do.
What were some of your other experiences?
Well, after the truce was signed, we were all really relieved, you know. And after on the, uh, we were just on the, well, we were on the, they were just the forces that were there for, still there, maybe some of them. And we had a lot of freedom, and I did take a trip or two to Seoul. I had a friend down there that worked in the hospital, and we got to see him. And I saw other people from our area and from our Central Illinois churches that we're affiliated with. And we could meet with them on Sundays, and we'd get together, and we we had some fairly scenic places that we go. I always thought Korea, most of it was just pretty barren, and the hills were scrubby trees on them, and they were really pretty barren. But there was one place that we could walk back into the hills, and there was it was a lake that they had dammed up for irrigation when they had rice paddies down in the valley, and it was really pretty. And there was some rocks like made me think of Starved Rock a little bit, and we could go and visit, walk there like on a Saturday or something. We would walk over there. We had all in all, I thought, you know, it wasn't that bad. And they always said when the food would be bad over there. Well, the first week I got there, I had scrambled or fresh eggs. I don't know where they got them for sure, but we had fresh eggs, and of course, when we were up on the front lines there, we did have sea rations twice a day, and then at noon we'd always have from the regiment headquarters, he'd bring us a hot meal at noon almost every day, and then morning and evening we'd have sea rations when we were up on that forward aid station.
Was there anything that you ate while you were serving that you cannot eat now?
No, I don't think so. No, they actually I felt I was fed pretty good, and sea rations we had. I got a can opener in here that we used to open our cans with, and all in all, I'd always felt that I really was blessed that so many boys had it worse than I did.
What other stories can you remember?
Pardon me?
What other stories can you remember?
Well, probably take me a little while to think of something. The trip over was unique. You know, I was on the ship for 15 days from Seattle to Yokohama there, and we crossed the international dateline, the 38th meridian, and that was, you know, they give us a plaque for Davy Jones' locker, I don't know when we crossed that, you know, and I did have two of my close buddies with me. One was John Zeltwanger from Morris, Minnesota, and the other one was Richard Tybel. He was from Morton, Illinois, and we were on the ship together, and you know, it was just really a kind of interesting trip. It wasn't like a cruise, but it was an interesting trip, and they asked for volunteers, and somebody said, "Well, you better volunteer so that you know keep you busier." So I volunteered, said we'd do something, and I got put on call it the uh, I was on the PX Kipe, the PX, uh, and so I was assigned to go down in the morning, pick up supplies, and take it up to PX, and we were the first one to buy it. We could be the first ones to buy anything that day, and so we'd spend days reading. And I remember I used to eat a lot of Kraft caramels, and and you know, it was monotonous in a way, and very crowded. You know, our sleeping quarters was very crowded, and there was one of the fellows that he was, well, actually we were 3 high and about 3 feet apart in the aisles, or maybe 3 or 4. And this boy said, well, his every morning he says his mouth tasted like a toilet. It was just a interesting thing. And of course, when we got over there, I was really happy to see the land. And the same way back, when we come home, we come through San Francisco and under the Golden Gate Bridge, and that was kind of exciting. And it was really, you know, interesting. And we always would say that, you know, we wouldn't take anything for our experience, but we didn't want to do it again. We wanted.
After you came back into the port of San Francisco, did you immediately get out of the service then?
Well, yes, we did some processing, I guess, and took away our probably fatigues and different clothing that we had, and then it was end of July there when I got home, and we had summer uniforms, which was just the khaki pants and shirt, and I never did have a Ike jacket or anything that I could bring home, but we did some processing there, and then we flew right to Fort Sheridan. I forgot that name of it at the beginning. Flew right back to Fort Sheridan, Chicago, and that's where I was released then. And my parents come up and got me.
So your parents met you in Fort Sheridan.
Mm-hmm. And when I left, I guess when I left Korea, I can't even think now, but I sent a telegram to my folks. I don't know if we do that if we went to Japan again first or not. I didn't hardly think we did, but we maybe did. Went to Japan. Anyhow, I could send a telegram to my folks that we got, that I was going to leave. And then when we got to San Francisco, I sent them another one that I was home. And it's 6 years ago, and a little bit hard to remember every detail. And I did write a autobiography of my life.
You did?
Up until about 1980 or so. And I should have had time to look into there, because I could have probably told a few more stories maybe if I'd looked that over again and read it.
So the war came to an end, is that correct, when you got out of the service?
Yes, they called it a truce.
A truce.
And that was a year before I got out. That was just about exactly a year.
Do you remember, you said the ship came into San Francisco, and what kind of welcome were you getting when you came into San Francisco? Were there a lot of people there?
Yes, there were. There were a lot of them out on the close to where we docked. You know, there were a lot of people out there. And then a photographer from one of the newspapers at San Francisco took a picture of our ship when we come in. Believe it or not, I was on that picture. And I don't know, we got the newspaper then after we was there, and I got the picture cut out, and I got that in my scrapbook too.
Do you remember the ship's name?
I used to. I'd perhaps see it again right now. I can't think what. Yeah, I used to know both of them, but I can't say them right now.
Okay. What did you do after you were discharged? Did you come home and immediately go to work?
Well, yes, because I was still living with my parents on the farm, and I just started farming. I mean, I helped them on the farm that fall, and then that was the fall of '54, and then by the July of '55, I got married, and we lived on the farm then where I was raised. Actually lived in that house for 65 years.
So you farmed,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what you did all your life?
Yes.
Huh.
Yep, that was all I knew, and we had opportunity to farm our own land and some of the neighbors. And
Very interesting. You talked about two of your friends that you went over to Korea with,
Mhm.
and did you come back with them?
no, when we were took basic training together, one of them was with me on the train to Virginia from Fort Sheridan, and the other one we just met there, but we got put in the same barracks, and we were together then through basic training,
Mm-hmm.
and so then after we got to Seattle, we were still together. When we got to Japan, where we had processing, we were each one put into a different division, and there was a 7th division and the 25th division, and I was in the 3rd division, so we wasn't even close together. It was scattered across Korea there, and it was. I did get to see them one time, I think, when I was over there, but otherwise we weren't close together at all. But I did meet Clyde Kuntz with a neighbor that lived about a mile and a quarter from out on the farm just across the field, and I was only over there about only about 2 weeks or so, or 3 weeks maybe, and he heard I was over there, and he had access to a Jeep, and he come over and visit me. And then I met another after the truce was signed. I met another man from Gridley. His name was Dean Mulligan, and he had been in the infantry and was in his whole unit was caught in a bad firefighting, and I think they were almost all wiped out, except him and maybe one or two other ones. When I visited him, he was acting first sergeant in his company, and he had a staff sergeant ranking already because there just was nobody left, and he just got to make his rank right on up to the top.
So did you stay in contact with anybody after you got out of service?
Yes, we've had a camp picket reunion for, well, it's going to be one this summer. Every other year since we were out, that were men that were there during the time from our churches. They were. We weren't all at the same time, but from a period of maybe a year, the men that went into Camp Picket were in that reunion, and we've been in that for ever since. And it was always very interesting to see it, especially as we got older. We see how each of us changed.
Okay. How has your service and experience affected your life? Has
How did it affect it?
yeah, has anyone ever thanked you for serving our country?
I think so. I think they did, Santa. I'm not certain with that. I think they did.
When you came home, was there a big reception for you, or
Yeah, not. I can't remember for sure. I mean, we have. I think they did have a. We call our church called it a singing. One of the things that we like to do is sing a cappella, and we had a singing for. Oh, I think they had a singing for me, and in honor of my getting home. But I don't remember that very much of that really. I was just kind of at that time. I was kind of wanting to forget everything really. But as I look back in the years, it comes back to you, and like I said, I felt like I just didn't have it near as bad as some of the boys had to have. Just one friend of mine that was in basic training, and he was in the 7th Division, and I think he was up on that what they called Pork Chop Hill, and he had to be a medical aid man. So he went right out with the infantry troops that went out on these patrols, and he would have to go out right with them, and he didn't carry a weapon either, and which was, really a weapon wouldn't have done a medic too much good, except unless they was really attacked and or something. But at least you was carrying your first aid kit, and he helped a lot of men that were wounded. But he had a lot of real hard time.
was there anyone else in your family that was in the service?
My older brother was in World War II.
Mhm.
He ended up on Okinawa. But I think that was pretty well to the end of the war when, of course, they had taken Okinawa already before he got there. But he had taken basic training in Camp Barkley, Texas, and now he's Lord willing, he will celebrate his 90th birthday this April. We're invited to that. They're going to have a celebration for his birthday.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any children?
We have 3 children.
Did any of them serve in the
No.
armed forces?
No.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Well, I just would like to say that we were thankful for a benevolent government in our nation. And at that time, well, my father was in World War I. And already then they could enter the service being drafted and being a non-combatant. But some of them boys really had to suffer some trials because they didn't understand what that meant. And so then my oldest brother, then he was also a non-combatant in the Second World War, but my father had some real stories that he could tell from the First World War, and he was over in France. He was on a troop ship that got the flu at that time, and of course the medics, that's what they were use for then. And he said he traveled to France. They landed in France, and he never got sick. And he said they didn't die from the flu. They died from pneumonia. They didn't have anything for pneumonia in them days. They would get pneumonia and then they would die.
Can you enlist in the service now as non-combative?
I don't think you can enlist that way. No, I really don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
They, you know, our church has always taken the stance that, and there are other denominations all over the country that kind of took that stance, but we just don't believe in killing. And I had my niece had a homeschool out in Leo, Indiana, and so she asked me one time if I would come and talk to their school children and bring some of this memorabilia that I had, and so I did, and I was telling the children how we did and how that we didn't carry a weapon and we didn't believe in killing. And then there was one of the ladies' mothers who was there, and well, now she says she don't quite agree with that. She says, what if your buddy was injured and he was in a real bad place? Well, I said, I just don't. I said I don't believe I'm going to carry a weapon, and that is our faith and our belief that we don't do that. And you know, many people don't realize that the world changed when Jesus come, and Jesus' kingdom isn't of this world, and he says that we shouldn't kill one another. We shouldn't even if someone slaps you in the face, you should turn the other cheek, and that's his doctrine, and we don't. And our government, is still. I talked with one of our clergy one time here in Gridley, and we decided that our government is still under the law of the Old Testament. God gave us ordained governments for our protection. Now, how they're, for how they will end up, that's in God's hands. It's not in our hands to judge or anything. But we just don't feel that, according to Jesus' life and his teachings, that we don't feel that we should do that. And I had one special friend he was from Withington, Minnesota, down the south part of Minnesota, and he was and this was during the war, actually, and he was my shotgun driver. Neither one of us had a weapon. But it wasn't, we just, we would have to go pick up wounded and bring them back, and I think he was a Church of Christ, and they had the same belief that we did. They just felt that way. And I mentioned that we're thankful that we have a benevolent government that left us do that. And nowadays I don't know if they still would do that or not. Our nation has changed so much.
Well, I guess because it's not, we don't have draft. So
Yeah.
consequently,
Right.
You have a choice to join the service or not. Mm-hmm. So that's probably why they don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know you brought us some things, and we would like to take some pictures of it. Is that okay with you?
Well, yeah, I guess. I mean,
okay.
I'm not necessarily proud of it because, like I say, I just done what I had been doing all the while.
Well, you know, I want to say this. You served our country. You served our country well, John. You did a fine job, and I thank you.
Well, thank you. I, like I said, I just was never really feared anything. I just knew things were going to happen how they did, how they would turn out.
Well, I also want to thank you for your time with giving us this interview. Your story is amazing, and I'm very proud to be able to be the one that interviewed you today.
I'm glad I could do it.
I'm going to now. If you'd like to do me a favor and hold this, and that way I can take some pictures of it. This is your certificate of the Bronze Star Medal. Okay. Oh. Okay.
That's a little replica of my Jeep.
Okay. Tell us about that.
Well, I just got a catalog that had these little Jeeps, and I just thought, well, before I went to Indiana to my niece, I thought, well, I'll show them what I really had. This is the litters that they had inside, and we had to drive with our windshield down a lot of time, especially in the daytime, so there wouldn't be a sun glare on it. And at night we couldn't even use the headlights. We called them cat eyes. They were just little slits that we could use. It shone a little bit down right in front of the Jeep, and that's what I was driving with that night that I had that little accident. Didn't have no headlights on. That's why I just missed that curve.
Okay. And what else do you have here?
Well, just a few items here that I had. This is dog tags with this little can opener. You never believe it because you can just open a can of sea rations with that, and open up a can of beans or whatever. And this was my belt, and I got that emblem off of something, and overseas they didn't mind that I wore that through with my fatigue, and this would be the other buckles. I got through the other buckles that I had, and I had some Korean money that I got one time, and this here ceramic comes from one time when I went to a trip to Seoul. We stopped at a place, and it was where they make ceramics, and just a big like oven, with a heater. It was kind of interesting. And this is a mess kit, tools. And I don't have the mess kit long, and I guess that's probably about all I had in our extra can opener. That's all I have in there.
Thank you.